the Democrats should be asking us for votes.
Right.
That's the way that ought to work, not our union leaders asking us for votes for Democrats.
Right.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We're gonna get to the thing that I highlighted at the top, which is, and it's a bit more political for us, but this is definitely in the news, and unions have been jumping in on it, and that is that President Joe Biden has announced that he is running for re-election. It was on Monday or Tuesday. He came out with his ad, and like a lot of these ads, there was a lot of platitudes, didn't really mean a whole lot, and I don't know. A lot of people, I think, kind of expected it. There was some talk at the beginning of his term about figuring that he was going to be a one-term president, that he was going to intentionally, I'm just going to step back and I'm not going to run for re-election. But no, he is running for re-election at 81 years old. Really kind of wild stuff. But, on the other hand, who on the Democratic side would run if not for Joe Biden, which is kind of pretty sad. I think it's obvious that Kamala Harris would do worse. Pete Buttigieg would do worse. There is Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker, and we were talking about Jay Inslee. He's been up in Washington, has been kind of interesting. So I don't know, maybe they could build a campaign if Biden wasn't running, but obviously they're not going to because Biden is running. And Biden announced, and already within this first week, he has had several major union endorsements. He's had the SEIU, which represents almost 1 million workers, IATSE, representing hundreds of thousands of workers, the Amalgamated Transit Union, the Iron Workers Union, the Electrical Workers Union, the National Education Association, American Federation of Teachers, lots and lots of unions coming out and already endorsing him within a week of his announcement. And I just have an issue with that. In all of their statements about this, every one of them just about mentioned that he's either the most pro-union president in history or the most pro-union since FDR. I think the first one is flatly untrue. I think FDR was certainly more pro-union than Joe Biden. The second one might be true, maybe. Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
because you got to think about that. If Joe Biden's not the most pro-union president since FDR, then who would be? Who would be the most pro-union president?
You could maybe make an argument for Truman or Eisenhower or Kennedy as being, more pro, or Johnson even, being more pro-labor. I mean, I'll give him credit. He's more pro-labor than Obama and Clinton.
Yes.
And that would be, of course, the standard comparisons there.
Right. And so, maybe that is, maybe that's some of the...
And we're talking degrees of difference here,
Right.
We're not talking drastic degrees.
Leaps and bounds.
Right, yeah. I mean, frankly, more marginal than significant, in my personal opinion.
The Amalgamated Transit Union had a graphic that says, "We're riding with Biden." And they said in their statement, one thing is crystal clear throughout our nation's politically divisive times. Joe has consistently stood for workers, public transit, and working families every step of the way. Public transit? I mean, what are they even talking about there? I don't even know what that is a reference to. IATSE mentioned, and look, each one of these unions, there are some things that each one point to that are real measurable material benefits to their members that has happened under the Biden administration with greater or lesser involvement from the president himself. IATSE mentioned the American Rescue Plan Act, which provided IATSE members relief during the COVID times when, obviously IATSE, theatrical and stage employees, for about 2 years.
Wasn't a lot of live entertainment happening.
Wasn't a lot of live entertainment. And so that unemployment stimulus was really important to keeping those folks their heads above water while the industry recovered. And so, that's real. That's real. That's not nothing, right? And it's not even, when I say it's not nothing, I don't even mean that to discount it. Like, that's a lot. The unemployment stimulus was really a huge thing for keeping the economy afloat and for keeping people afloat as they were waiting for their jobs to reopen. And as now most people are back in their jobs. And for the last year or year and a half, that unemployment stimulus, or even 2 years in Alabama, has been expired, even though people still like to pretend. And it's super weird that this talking point is still around about how the government is giving too much people money and that's why nobody wants to work anymore, even though we have a higher workforce participation rate than we have in decades. We have the lowest unemployment rate that we have than we have in decades, and there's no more unemployment stimulus. Wild talking point, but it was very important while it lasted. The iron workers in their statement mentioned that, they mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, which we've talked about the CHIPS Act just a couple weeks ago, and how that has really been a giveaway to major corporations without important strings attached for workers and for labor and for unions. And the IBEW in particular, they represent rail workers. And the IBEW actually came out the day and endorsed Joe Biden. And, it seems really inappropriate at this stage in the game to endorse Joe Biden so quickly, because, and David Griscom was mentioning this on Left Reckoning when, and he was talking about this in relation to Bernie endorsing Joe Biden, because Bernie endorsed Joe Biden on the same day, I think. And the message that sends with Bernie and with labor is not that Joe Biden is the least bad option. We are a distinct movement with distinct imperatives, things that we're fighting for. And among the people that there are, Joe Biden will be the best enemy to face. Right? That could be an accurate, if an endorsement said that this week, then I would be interested in reading that and I would not take such an issue with it. But all of these endorsements are just gushing about how great Biden is. And there's just no reason to do that. There's no reason to do that at all. You can say that you're going to vote for Biden, that members should vote for Biden, and but recognize the limitations. And yeah. What an endorsement now sends is that we're part of the same movement. Joe Biden and labor are in lockstep. And that's just simply not the case.
No, it's not.
It's simply not the case.
It's not. And, it does bother me as well. And I'm willing to admit reality, right? I'm willing to acknowledge that more than likely the 2024 presidential election will be between Joe Biden and someone else who is worse. Right. I'm willing to accept that is almost certainly the likelihood. And therefore, it's not unreasonable to expect that unions would endorse Joe Biden given those circumstances. But I agree with you about the gushing nature of these press releases and these endorsements, because if anything, it should be the opposite. The Democrats should be gushing about labor and begging us for their votes and for resources, for our volunteer time, for our contributions, for our votes. That's the way it should be. They should be begging us, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah, and the State Employees Association of New Hampshire mentions that they declined to endorse Joe Biden at this time, and they strike a really good balance in this declaration that they have for him. They say, after careful consideration and in stark contrast to the State Employees Association affiliate Service Employees International Union (SEIU), we want to make it clear that we are not endorsing Joe Biden for re-election in the upcoming presidential race at this time. Following a robust analysis of the current political landscape, we have come to the conclusion that our members and the New Hampshire voters deserve a competitive Democratic primary. While we respect President Biden's decades of experience in public service and his commitment to public policy, we believe that his record and actions during his first term as president do not merit an automatic re-endorsement. We eagerly await his return to the Granite State to continue the conversation about his labor priorities, and our door is always open to President Biden. We wholeheartedly believe that it is important for our country to have a leader who is fully committed to labor. We need a president who will champion a significantly higher minimum wage, the PRO Act, rail workers' right to strike, Starbucks workers' right to organize, and truly all working people's rights to a living wage. The New Hampshire Union acknowledged that its reluctance may not be shared by its members and supporters, but they say, we hope that they will understand that we are acting in the best interests of our union, our community, and our country. We will continue to monitor the political landscape and engage in discussions with other candidates who share our values and vision for the future. We encourage all our members to exercise their right to vote and to support candidates who reflect their values and beliefs. This is a good statement. This is not, and it's not a statement that's coming out with, barn burners about how terrible Biden is. And it's even, recognizing that there are some positives. And there are, right? But the statement there, the statement that is the most important, his record and actions do not merit an automatic re-endorsement. And that is a fact. That is just a fact. They don't. They do not merit an automatic re-endorsement, and we should not be giving it to them as labor. And so because of the things like denying rail workers the right to strike, that's a huge thing. And the idea that, it's just, and David also mentioned in the chat, David Story, friend of the show, co-founder, he mentioned that one of the things that it does is it also serves to hamper potential competition. And that's absolutely right. The more people come out and endorse Biden, the less likely it will be for another Democratic candidate to jump in, the less easy it will be for other candidates to gain traction. And which is not even to say that I would anticipate other candidates jumping in the absence of union endorsements. It just does not look good.
Right.
And it also
forecloses opportunities and potential. And, we don't know yet if there is going to be a candidate who is authentically more pro-labor. That is possible. Again, realistically, he's an incumbent president. I don't expect a significant challenge necessarily, and I don't necessarily expect him to lose. But also, we are in unprecedented times politically, right?
Right.
Who expected someone to lose an election and try to stay in office?
Right.
There's just a lot happening here. And I just don't like the automatic nature of this. I don't like the fact that members are not being asked.
Exactly.
Because my union and my wife's union, which is two different unions, they have both endorsed, and neither one of us had our opinion asked about it. And, I'm willing to respect the majority of our membership, and if the majority of the membership wants to do this, then so be it. I will, abide by the will of the majority because I believe in that, even if I wouldn't vote to do that. But that's the thing. We should have some input. And as I was talking to you earlier off the air, it only adds fuel to the fire of anti-union critiques, right? Because the right wing in this country wants you to believe that unions are just in the pockets of Democrats, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi are the same people as Randy Weingarten and Lily Garcia and, Sean O'Brien, and they're all in the same club. And I would say that that's not accurate. But when union leaders in D.C., make these gushing endorsements without the least bit of member engagement or input, that gives them an argument, right? And I know it's not an accurate reflection of like where the union's resources are spent, or how unions do their work day in, day out, but it certainly gives credence to some of those right-wing anti-union critiques. Right. And I think it's a mistake for labor officials, labor leaders, to act as if they are in the pockets of mainstream establishment Democrats, because mainstream establishment Democrats have abandoned labor for the past 50 years. Right. That's not, and I don't think that's a radical opinion to say that. That's just an observation. Right. I just find it objectionable to do it in this way, and I think we could do better in terms of the process. I certainly think we could do better in terms of a candidate. Realistically, maybe not. Maybe the end results are all the same, right? Maybe you poll the membership and you take your time and you let the primary play out, and at the end of the day, you still endorse Joe Biden and do the same thing you were going to do. Okay, fair enough. But I get the same heartburn that you do, and I understand this is a controversial topic. I understand, even some of our sponsors may not even appreciate this conversation. But we have to have real, authentic conversations about this stuff, because it does matter. Because when you go out and you talk to the general public about unions and why they're good and why you should join them and why we should support them, one of the first things that's going to come up is, oh, that's just Democrat stuff. Right. Oh, that's just Joe Biden and them. Right. And this doesn't help. Right. Let me tell you.
And like I mentioned earlier, even though, this does send a signal, that signal is not accurate. The super majority of union spending comes from local unions, and local unions do not spend a lot of money thinking about who are we going to endorse. They don't spend a lot of resources or time sending people out to knock doors. That's just not what local unions do, right? But local unions spend way more money than international unions do. And so, the accurate assessment of the labor movement is actually that, limitations and all, the majority of the time and resources, the super majority of the time and resources that are spent by unions go to representing members, go to fighting for higher wages, go to saving workers from unfair treatment on the job and safer working conditions. And all of that is true. But this kind of stuff, when the most visible parts of our unions are coming out swinging for somebody that has just, as a fact of the matter, not had our back every step of the way, is bad. And also, it's not even great. It's not even the most effective thing for Biden. I mean, even thinking if I were to be thinking as a Biden political operative, what is the more convincing thing that I could tout on the campaign trail? What would be the more valuable thing to have as a resource on the campaign trail? Is it more valuable to have a statement from an international union that is created by half a dozen people in D.C. that none of the members are consulted on, or immediately after I announce my campaign, that no members are asked about? Is that the most valuable thing? Or would it be more valuable if after the primary season is over, the unions poll their membership, have a referendum of some kind, and then by virtue of the will of their members, the union is able to say, Our members voted. Our members voted, and a majority of our members think that our union should endorse Joe Biden for president of the United States. And so by virtue of the will of our members, we are dedicating this many resources and this many boots on the ground to make sure that that happens. And this is why. Which would be more valuable? Obviously, I think the second would be more valuable. But instead, what's happening is the first. What's happening is, just as a fact of the matter, and look, I'm happy to talk to any of these people in DC, and I'm sure most of these people in DC have their heads screwed on right and their hearts in the right place. But as a fact of the matter, all of these statements were crafted by maybe half a dozen people in DC, and the members were not consulted. And so it's not an effective endorsement. It's just not. It's just not. And so we shouldn't be doing ineffective endorsements. We shouldn't be doing ineffective endorsements. Our members should be involved when we endorse political candidates, especially at the national level where everybody has an opinion on it. I think maybe it's one thing if you're endorsing a local union is endorsing people on the local level without input from the membership, because I think, a lot of the membership just isn't. And so, there's a place for like political education there. But on the national level where people have an opinion about this kind of stuff, you really just can't be going and doing stuff like this without members' voice. And it's not even like most of the members are going to disagree ultimately with a Joe Biden endorsement, right? Because union members vote for Democrats like 60-40. So if you polled the members, in all likelihood, you're going to be able to get a Joe Biden endorsement. And so why not just do that? Why not just do that? I can't fathom it. And so it's just very frustrating as a member of the labor movement, as a member of the, fortunately my union hasn't done this yet. And the last time that we endorsed, we did actually have a referendum. We did have a referendum, and the results of the referendum were abided by. And AFGE endorsed the candidate that the members voted for. And we only endorsed after the primary. We ended up endorsing Joe Biden, but it was because the members voted to. So hopefully that's the process that we follow this year. I don't know if it's in the Constitution or not, but yeah, it's just, it's bad. It's not good as a matter of democracy, as a principled unionist and, supporter of democracy. We should not be doing this kind of stuff. And then cynically, as like a political operative, it's not even the most effective way to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, and as we kind of close up, I just wanted to, something that David said, and David Story said in the chat that is very true, is just like, realistically, what is the alternative? And that's what I was saying, that, as much as I'd like the process to look differently and feel differently, I recognize that the end result was probably going to be this regardless, right? Even if they had taken their time and polled the membership. And I think that speaks to a much deeper issue we have. If that really is the best we can do, is a Joe Biden versus a Ron DeSantis or a Donald Trump, it is a sad reflection of the situation here in the United States.
Right.
And, my hope is that we have a robust enough working class movement in this country to exert our own demands upon politicians of all stripes, and build consensus around a true pro-worker agenda in this country, which hasn't been happening.
Right. Yeah. And, like I said, it's not that I would be ultimately against a Joe Biden endorsement in the general election. I think that probably for a lot of unions, maybe even for most unions, that would make sense. I think also not endorsing makes sense at all. Right.
I do too. And I think, frankly, like me personally, like I said at the beginning, I think the Democrats should be asking us for votes.
Right.
That's the way that ought to work. Not our union leaders asking us for votes for Democrats.
Right.
And I just, I am uncomfortable with that. I don't care for it. It's not going to change how I act. I didn't vote for Joe Biden and do not plan on voting for Joe Biden because he doesn't need my vote in the state of Alabama. Frankly, it won't make a damn bit of difference. So won't get my vote, won't get my money. But yeah, I would respectfully suggest to our union leaders in D.C. That there's a lot we could do with our resources that goes beyond issuing gushing endorsements of Joe Biden the day he announces.
Yep.
And, you know, to the extent that we have to be engaged in electoral politics, there are alternatives to what we've been doing. Because what we have been doing really hasn't been paying dividends by any objective measurement.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.